The exchange program officially began a few months later. Ethan stood on the dock of the intergalactic ship, watching as students from Zirac 7 prepared to board alongside human representatives who had traveled to the Academy for the occasion. It was surreal. Humans and aliens working together, sharing ideas, and planning for a future where differences weren't barriers but bridges. Jake and Chloe approached him, their expressions nervous but excited. "You ready for this?" Jake asked, adjusting the strap of his bag. Ethan smiled. "Yeah, I think we all are." Chloe glanced at the humans mingling nearby, her glowing green eyes thoughtful. "It's weird, you know. A year ago, I would have laughed at the idea of teaming up with humans. Now, it feels right." Mia joined them, her silver hair shimmering in the light. "That's growth," she said simply. "Change isn't easy, but it's worth it." As the ship lifted off, Ethan looked out the window at Zirac 7, shrinking into the distance. His heart raced with anticipation. Earth awaited them, a planet full of challenges, beauty, and endless potential. This time, they weren't just visitors. They were partners. When they landed on Earth, the reception was warm and welcoming. Humans gathered to greet them, curious and eager to learn. Over the weeks that followed, the students worked side by side, tackling projects that combined alien technology with human creativity. Together, they developed solutions for clean energy, sustainable farming, and disaster prevention. Every success strengthened their bond, proving that collaboration could achieve what no single species could do alone. One evening, after a long day of work, Ethan found himself sitting under the stars with Mia, Jake, and Chloe. The air was cool, and the distant hum of cicadas filled the night. For a moment, none of them spoke, content to simply enjoy the quiet. "This place is amazing," Jake said finally, breaking the silence. "I get why you're so proud of it, Ethan." Chloe nodded, her voice soft. "It's not perfect, but it's alive. Like you said, it has heart." Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. Hearing those words from them meant more than he could express. He looked at each of them, gratitude swelling in his chest. "Thank you for everything, for believing in me, in us." Mia smiled, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "We wouldn't be here without you, Ethan. You reminded us what really matters, not power or perfection, but connection. That's something every species can learn from." As the days turned into weeks, the partnership grew stronger. Humans and aliens celebrated their successes together, shared meals, and exchanged stories about their worlds. Ethan watched as friendships formed across species, breaking down walls that had stood for centuries. It wasn't always smooth. There were misunderstandings and moments of frustration, but they faced them together, learning from each other along the way. By the time the program ended, Ethan knew things would never be the same. Back on Zirac 7, the Academy buzzed with excitement over the results of the exchange. New courses were added to teach students about human culture and history, while Earth-based schools began incorporating lessons about alien civilizations. The seeds of understanding had been planted, and they were already beginning to grow. On his last night before returning home, Ethan stood by the lake one final time. The water sparkled under the moons, peaceful and timeless. He thought about how far he'd come, from being an outsider to becoming a bridge between worlds. It wasn't just his journey anymore. It belonged to everyone who had chosen to see beyond their differences and embrace the unknown. Mia appeared beside him, her presence comforting. "What are you thinking about?" "The future," Ethan replied, his voice steady. "It's not going to be easy, but I believe in it. In us." She smiled, placing a hand on his shoulder. "So do I." As they walked back toward the Academy, Ethan felt a deep sense of peace. Change took time, but it always started with small steps. And now, thanks to him and so many others, those steps were leading somewhere brighter. A future where humans and aliens stood side by side, united by hope, curiosity, and the courage to dream together. Months had passed since the Earth field trip, and the Academy was buzzing with energy. The idea of an exchange program between humans and aliens had taken root, growing faster than anyone expected. Students from different species worked together to draft proposals, create presentations, and even design logos for the initiative. Ethan found himself at the center of it all, guiding discussions and sharing insights about human culture. It wasn't always easy. There were disagreements and challenges, but the group kept pushing forward, driven by a shared vision. One afternoon, the headmaster called everyone to the auditorium for an announcement. The room was packed, filled with students, teachers, and even representatives from the Intergalactic Council. Ethan sat near the front, his heart pounding as he wondered what the headmaster would say. "Today marks a historic moment," the headmaster began, his deep voice carrying across the silent room. "Thanks to the efforts of our students, and particularly one student, we are launching a new partnership between Xerac 7 and Earth." A murmur rippled through the crowd, and Ethan felt his cheeks flush as the headmaster turned to him. "Ethan has shown us that understanding begins with curiosity and respect. His leadership inspired this initiative, and I am proud to announce that we will begin sending small groups of students to Earth, not as observers, but as collaborators." Applause erupted, echoing off the walls. Ethan looked around, stunned, as his classmates cheered. Mia gave him a wide grin and a thumbs up, while Jake and Chloe clapped enthusiastically beside him. For once, Ethan didn't feel out of place. He felt like he belonged. After the announcement, the students gathered in the courtyard to celebrate. Jake slapped Ethan on the back, laughing. "You did it, primitive boy. You're basically a hero now." Chloe rolled her eyes but smiled. "Don't let it go to his head, Jake. He's already insufferable enough." Ethan laughed, shaking his head. "I didn't do this alone. All of you helped." Mia stepped closer, her expression thoughtful. "Still, you started it. You opened their eyes, and ours. That's something no one can take away from you." As the celebration continued, Ethan wandered off to a quiet corner of the courtyard. He needed a moment to process everything. The exchange program was real. Humans and aliens would work side by side, learning from each other and building something greater than either could achieve alone. It was more than he had ever dreamed possible. Later that evening, Ethan sat by the lake again, staring up at the stars. He thought about Earth, the blue skies, the green fields, the laughter of children playing in the streets. He thought about Mr. Harper and the townspeople who had welcomed them so warmly, and he thought about his own journey, from being mocked and dismissed to becoming someone others respected and admired. Mia joined him after a while, sitting quietly beside him. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. Ethan nodded. "Yeah, just thinking about how far we've come. How much things have changed." "You deserve it," Maya said firmly. "You showed everyone what it means to be human, and not just humans. You reminded all of us what it means to be alive, to care, to dream, to fight for something bigger than yourself." Ethan smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. "It's not just me. Everyone played a part. Even Jake and Chloe." Mia chuckled. "Yeah, they've come a long way too. Who would have thought?" They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the gentle lapping of the water against the shore. Then Maya spoke again, her tone soft but serious. "Do you think humans and aliens can really work together? Long term, I mean." Ethan looked at her, his gaze steady. "I do. It won't always be easy. There will be misunderstandings and mistakes. But if we keep trying, if we stay open to learning from each other, I think we can make it work." Mia nodded, her silver hair catching the light of the moons. "Then I believe you. If anyone can make it happen, it's you." For the first time in his life, Ethan felt truly hopeful about the future. This wasn't just about him or his species. It was about connection, unity, and the endless possibilities that came when people chose to see beyond their differences. As he gazed up at the stars, he whispered quietly to himself, "We're ready." Weeks passed, and life at the academy settled into a new rhythm. Ethan noticed subtle changes in how people treated him and each other. Conversations that used to focus solely on alien achievements now included mentions of human accomplishments too. Students from different species began working together more often, sharing ideas and learning from one another. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. One evening, Ethan found himself sitting by the lake near the academy. The water shimmered under the twin moons of Xerac 7, reflecting streaks of silver and blue. He liked coming here when he needed time to think. Tonight, his thoughts were filled with Earth, the smell of fresh air, the sound of laughter, the way people came together during tough times. He missed it, even though he had only visited briefly. "You're hard to find sometimes," Maya said as she approached, her voice soft so as not to startle him. She sat down beside him, brushing a strand of her silver hair behind her ear. "What's on your mind?" Ethan hesitated before answering. "I've been thinking about Earth, about how much I want to go back someday." Mia nodded thoughtfully. "Do you think you will?" "Maybe," Ethan replied. "But even if I don't, I feel like I've already brought a piece of it here, with me. You know, like showing everyone what humans are capable of. That feels important." Mia smiled. "It is important. You've changed things, Ethan. People see humans differently now because of you." Before Ethan could respond, Jake and Chloe appeared, walking along the path toward the lake. They stopped when they saw him and Mia, looking unsure if they should join. Ethan waved them over. "Hey, what are you guys doing out here?" "We were looking for you," Jake admitted, glancing at Chloe. "There's something we need to say." Chloe stepped forward, fidgeting with the hem of her jacket. "We've been thinking about everything, about Earth and humans, and, well, about how wrong we were." Jake nodded quickly, chiming in. "Yeah, we didn't get it before. We thought humans were weak because you didn't have all the fancy tech or whatever. But after seeing Earth, and after everything you did, we realized strength isn't just about power. It's about heart, and courage, and sticking together no matter what." Ethan stared at them, surprised by their honesty. "Thanks," he said finally. "That means a lot." Chloe shrugged, trying to act casual but failing to hide the sincerity in her eyes. "Don't make us regret being nice, okay?" Everyone laughed, the tension easing. For a moment, they all sat quietly, watching the water ripple under the light of the moons. Then Jake spoke again, his tone lighter this time. "So, do you think humans would ever team up with aliens? Like, officially?" Ethan tilted his head, considering the question. "I think they'd be open to it. Humans are curious. They like learning new things and meeting new people. If aliens came to Earth peacefully, I'm sure they'd welcome them." Mia leaned forward, her eyes sparkling. "What if we started smaller? Like, what if some of us went back to Earth, not as tourists, but as friends, to learn from them and share our knowledge too?" Ethan felt a spark of excitement ignite in his chest. "You mean, like an exchange program?" "Exactly," Mia exclaimed. "Imagine the possibilities. Humans teaching aliens about resilience and creativity, while aliens show humans new ways of solving problems. Together, we could accomplish so much." Jake grinned, catching on to the idea. "And maybe we could help them fix some of their issues, like earthquakes or pollution. That'd be cool." Chloe added, her voice quieter but full of conviction. "And maybe they could teach us how to care more. For each other, for the planet, for everything." The four of them sat there, dreaming aloud about what such a partnership might look like. By the time they headed back to the academy, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about proving humans were equal to aliens. It was about building bridges, creating connections, and working toward a future where every species could thrive. As he climbed into bed that night, Ethan stared at the ceiling, replaying the conversation in his mind. He didn't know if an exchange program would happen anytime soon, or ever, but the idea was enough to keep him hopeful. Change took time, but it always started with small steps, and Ethan knew he had already taken the first one. The days following the Earth trip felt different for Ethan. The teasing and mocking that used to fill the hallways had quieted down, replaced by something he wasn't used to: respect. It wasn't loud or obvious, but it was there in small ways. Students who once ignored him now nodded when they passed him in the halls. Teachers called on him more often during class discussions, giving him a chance to share his thoughts. Even Jake and Chloe seemed to go out of their way to include him, though they still struggled to fully let go of their old habits. One afternoon, the Academy announced a special presentation about human achievements. Ethan wasn't sure what to expect, but when he walked into the auditorium, he saw posters and displays set up around the room. Some featured famous humans like scientists, artists, and explorers. Others highlighted inventions like the wheel, electricity, and space shuttles. Ethan's heart swelled with pride as he looked at the exhibits. He had always known humans were capable of great things, but seeing it all laid out like this made him feel even prouder. Mia found him standing near a display about the first moon landing. "This is amazing," she said, her silver hair catching the light from the overhead panels. "Did you know they're showcasing all of this because of your trip?" Ethan blinked in surprise. "What? Because of me?" She nodded. "After the field trip, some of the students started talking about how much they learned from you, and about humans in general. They wanted to share that with everyone else." Ethan didn't know what to say. He had never imagined his actions would lead to something like this. Before he could respond, Jake and Chloe approached, looking slightly awkward but determined. "We helped organize this," Jake admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. "Well, kind of. We suggested showing stuff about humans since, we didn't really know much before." Chloe added quickly, "And we thought it would be good for everyone to learn, not just us." Ethan smiled, genuinely touched. "Thanks. That means a lot." As the presentation began, the headmaster took the stage to introduce the event. "Today, we celebrate the ingenuity and resilience of humanity," he said, his voice echoing through the room. "While their methods may differ from ours, their accomplishments deserve recognition. Let this serve as a reminder that understanding other species enriches our own knowledge and perspective." Ethan listened intently as students took turns explaining different aspects of human history and culture. One group talked about art, showing paintings and sculptures created over thousands of years. Another discussed medicine, highlighting breakthroughs that saved millions of lives. A third group focused on space exploration, detailing how humans had managed to leave their planet and land on the moon using technology far less advanced than what most species had today. Jake raised his hand during the cue and a session afterward. "Why did humans keep trying to explore space even though it was so hard for them?" he asked. Ethan stood up, feeling nervous but determined. "Because they dreamed big," he answered. "Humans have always looked at the stars and wondered what was out there. Even when it seemed impossible, they kept going. They failed a lot, but every failure taught them something new. And eventually, those lessons led to success." The room was silent for a moment before breaking into applause. Ethan sat back down, his face warm with embarrassment, but also pride. Mia gave him a thumbs up, while Jake and Chloe exchanged impressed glances. Later that evening, Ethan stayed behind to help clean up the displays. As he packed up the last poster, Chloe walked over, holding a crumpled piece of paper. "Here," she said, handing it to him. "I drew this during a presentation. Thought you might like it." Ethan unfolded the paper and saw a sketch of Earth surrounded by tiny figures holding hands. At the bottom, Chloe had written, "Strength comes in many forms." "Thanks," Ethan said softly, meeting her eyes. "It's perfect." Chloe shrugged, looking away. "Don't make a big deal out of it, okay?" But Ethan knew it was a big deal. Every small gesture, every effort to understand, brought them closer to bridging the gap between species. Humans weren't perfect, but neither were aliens. What mattered was the willingness to learn, to grow, and to connect. As Ethan left the auditorium, he realized something important. This wasn't the end of his journey. It was just the beginning. For the first time, he felt hopeful about the future. Maybe one day, humans wouldn't just be seen as equals. They'd be celebrated for everything they contributed to the universe. And maybe, just maybe, he'd play a part in making that happen. Back on the ship, the ride home was quieter than usual. The students sat in small clusters, whispering among themselves. Ethan stayed by the window, staring out at the stars as Earth grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely. He felt a strange mix of emotions: pride, sadness, and something he couldn't quite name. Pride because he had stood up for himself and his species. Sadness because leaving Earth felt like saying goodbye to a part of him. And that unnamed feeling. It was hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, this trip had changed things. For him and for the others. Jake leaned back in his seat, arms crossed, looking thoughtful. "You know," he said suddenly, breaking the silence, "I never thought I'd say this, but humans aren't completely useless." Chloe shot him a glare. "Don't push it, Jake." But Ethan didn't take offense. Instead, he turned slightly, meeting Jake's gaze. "What made you change your mind?" Jake hesitated, scratching the back of his neck. "Well, you handled that earthquake thing like a pro. None of us knew what to do, but you kept your cool. That's not nothing." Ethan nodded slowly. "It's not about being perfect or having all the answers. It's about doing what you can when it matters." Mia chimed in from across the aisle. "That's true. Humans might not have the same tech or resources as other species, but they make up for it with heart. You saw how everyone worked together after the quake. No one hesitated to help each other." Chloe sighed, resting her chin on her hand. "I still don't get it, though. How do they stay so hopeful after everything they've been through? Wars, disasters, diseases. They should be broken. But they're not." Ethan smiled faintly. "Because giving up isn't really an option. Humans are stubborn like that. When things go wrong, they find a way to fix them, or at least try, even if it takes years, decades, or centuries." The group fell silent again, each lost in their own thoughts. For the first time, no one mocked Ethan or made snide comments about humans. Instead, they seemed to be processing everything they had seen and experienced on Earth. When they returned to Zirac 7, the students disembarked quietly, their usual energy subdued. Ethan expected the teasing to start again once they were back at the academy, but it didn't. As they walked through the halls, Jake and Chloe kept glancing at him, almost as if they were waiting for him to say something. But Ethan didn't feel the need to fill the silence. He simply went to his room, dropped his bag on the floor, and collapsed onto his bed. Later that evening, Mia came by to check on him. She knocked softly before stepping inside. "How are you holding up?" she asked, sitting on the edge of his bed. Ethan shrugged. "I'm okay. Just thinking about Earth." He nodded. "Yeah, about how much I miss it, even though I've never lived there. It's weird, isn't it? Feeling homesick for a place you don't really know." Mia smiled gently. "Not weird. Understandable. Earth is part of who you are. And now, thanks to you, some of the others see that too." Ethan looked at her, surprised. "You think so?" "I know so," she replied firmly. "Jake and Chloe wouldn't admit it openly, but they respect you now. They saw what you're capable of, and what humans are capable of. That's a big deal." Ethan let out a long breath, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. Maybe the trip hadn't fixed everything, but it had planted a seed of understanding, of acceptance, and maybe, over time, that seed would grow into something bigger. The next morning, Ethan woke up early and headed to class. When he walked in, Jake and Chloe were already there, sitting near the front. To his surprise, they moved over, making space for him beside them. Ethan hesitated for a moment before taking the seat. "Hey," Jake said awkwardly, rubbing the back of his neck. But We wanted to say thanks again. For everything. Chloe added, her voice softer than usual. And sorry. Again. For being jerks. Ethan smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. Thanks. And apology accepted. As the lesson began, Ethan glanced around the room. Some of the other students gave him quick smiles or nods, acknowledging him in ways they never had before. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. And for now, that was enough. For the first time since arriving at the academy, Ethan felt like he belonged, not because he had changed who he was, but because others had finally started to see him for who he truly was, a human, proud of where he came from and ready to show the universe what that meant. After the earthquake, the group gathered near the edge of the park, shaken but unharmed. The townspeople had already begun cleaning up, working together to clear fallen branches and check on neighbors. Ethan stood apart from the others, watching silently as humans moved with purpose and determination. Despite the chaos, there was a sense of unity in the air, a quiet strength that seemed to flow between them. Jake paced back and forth, muttering under his breath. That was insane. How do humans live like this? One wrong move and everything falls apart. Ethan turned to him, his voice calm but firm. Earthquakes happen sometimes. People know how to deal with them. They rebuild, they adapt. That's what humans do. Chloe, still sitting on the ground where Ethan had pulled her to safety, looked up at him. Her usual sharp tone was gone, replaced by something softer. I didn't realize it would be like this. Mia knelt beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. It's okay. None of us were prepared for that. But look around. You see how everyone's helping each other. That's what matters most. Ethan nodded, glancing toward the townspeople who were now sharing water bottles and blankets with those affected by the quake. A young boy handed a crying child a stuffed animal, while an older man used his jacket to cover a woman shivering in the cool breeze. It wasn't technology or advanced tools saving the day. It was simple acts of kindness and teamwork. Mr. Harper arrived soon after, limping slightly but carrying a tray of sandwiches and bottled water. Thought you kids might need something to eat, he said warmly, setting the tray down on a nearby bench. You did good out there, Ethan. Real good. Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. He hadn't expected praise, especially not from someone like Mr. Harper. I just did what anyone else would have done, he replied quietly. The old man shook his head, smiling. Not everyone steps up when things get tough. You showed courage today, and leadership, don't forget that. Jake overheard the exchange and stepped closer, his expression conflicted. Yeah, thanks for keeping us safe back there. I guess we wouldn't have known what to do without you. For a moment, Ethan thought he imagined the apology. Jake wasn't exactly the type to admit he was wrong about anything, but the sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. Ethan gave him a small nod. We're all learning, right? Chloe finally stood up, brushing dirt off her clothes. She hesitated before speaking, her words slow and deliberate. I'm sorry too, for everything I said earlier, about Earth being messy and primitive. I didn't understand until now. Her apology caught Ethan off guard. He hadn't expected her to change her mind so quickly, or at all. But seeing the honesty in her eyes, he realized she meant every word. It's okay, he said simply. Sometimes it takes seeing things firsthand to really understand. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the damaged park, the group started heading back toward their guide drone. The mood was different now, quieter, more reflective. Even Jake and Chloe walked side by side with Ethan, their earlier hostility replaced by a tentative respect. Mia caught up with Ethan, walking beside him as they trailed behind the others. You changed their minds today, she said softly. Not just with your words, but with your actions. They saw what it means to be human, and they couldn't ignore it. Ethan shrugged, though a small smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. Maybe. Or maybe they just needed to see Earth for themselves. This planet isn't perfect, but it's home. And no matter where I go, that'll always be part of me." Mia smiled back, her silver hair catching the fading sunlight. "And that's something to be proud of." When they reached the ship later that evening, the students climbed aboard in silence. As the vessel lifted off, Ethan gazed out the window at the shrinking town below. The cracks in the roads and broken lampposts were still visible, but so was the resilience of its people. Earth had shown him, and the others, that strength wasn't about power or perfection. It was about connection, compassion, and the willingness to keep moving forward no matter what. For the first time in his life, Ethan felt truly proud to call himself human. The next morning, the group set off to explore more of the town. Their guide drone led them to a small museum filled with artifacts and exhibits about human history. Ethan felt a mix of pride and curiosity as he walked through the halls, pointing out items that caught his eye. He explained the significance of each piece: ancient tools, faded maps, and replicas of spacecraft that had once traveled to the moon. "This is where humans first landed on the moon," Ethan said, stopping in front of a large photograph of astronauts planting a flag on the lunar surface. "It was a huge step for us. People worked together for years to make it happen." Mia tilted her head, studying the picture closely. "That's impressive," she admitted. "You didn't have advanced technology back then, but you still managed to reach space." Jake crossed his arms, trying to downplay Ethan's words. "Yeah, but look how long it took them. We could have done it in half the time." Ethan didn't argue. Instead, he moved on to another exhibit, this one showcasing medical breakthroughs. He pointed to a model of a DNA strand. "Humans figured out how to read and edit DNA. It helped us cure diseases that used to kill millions of people." Chloe raised an eyebrow, her tone skeptical. "So what? Other species have been doing that for centuries." "But not all species," Mia countered softly, glancing at Chloe. "Not everyone has the same resources or opportunities. Humans did it with what they had, and that's worth something." Chloe opened her mouth to reply but stopped herself, looking unsure. For the first time, she seemed to hesitate before dismissing Ethan's explanations. As the day went on, the group visited a local park where children played soccer on a grassy field. Ethan watched them kick the ball back and forth, laughing and shouting. He smiled faintly, remembering similar games from his childhood on Zirac 7. Jake, however, couldn't resist making a comment. "Look at them running around like wild animals," he said with a smirk. "No wonder humans are so primitive." Ethan turned to face him, his voice calm but firm. "They're having fun. Isn't that what matters? Not everything has to be about speed or strength." Jake frowned, taken aback by Ethan's response. Before he could say anything else, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. At first, it was subtle, a slight shaking that made the leaves on the trees rustle. But within seconds, the tremors grew stronger, knocking some of the students off balance. "What's happening?" Chloe shouted, clutching onto a nearby bench for support. "It's an earthquake," Ethan yelled over the noise. He grabbed Mia's arm to steady her as cracks appeared in the ground. The children playing soccer scattered, screaming as their parents rushed to pull them to safety. Panic spread quickly among the alien students. Most of them had never experienced anything like this before. Jake stumbled backward, his usual confidence replaced by fear. "What do we do?" he cried, looking around desperately. Ethan stepped forward, his mind racing. He remembered stories his grandparents had told him about surviving earthquakes. "Stay away from buildings and power lines," he instructed, raising his voice to be heard over the chaos. "Find open spaces and stay low." Mia nodded, following his directions immediately. The others hesitated, unsure of what to do, but when another powerful shake sent debris falling from nearby structures, they scrambled to follow Ethan's advice. Chloe tripped over a root sticking out of the cracked earth, landing hard on her knees. She looked up, terrified, as a lamppost swayed dangerously close to her. Without thinking, Ethan dashed toward her, grabbing her arm and pulling her to safety just as the pole crashed to the ground where she had been moments earlier. Breathing heavily, Chloe stared at Ethan, her eyes wide with shock. Why? Why did you help me? Ethan shrugged, brushing dirt off his hands. Because it's the right thing to do. The tremors eventually subsided, leaving the park in disarray. Trees were uprooted, benches overturned, and cracks ran across the pathways. The townspeople began gathering to assess the damage, helping each other clear debris and check for injuries. Jake approached Ethan, his expression uncharacteristically serious. You handled that pretty well, he admitted grudgingly. Better than any of us would have. Ethan didn't respond. He simply looked around at the scene, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. Earth wasn't perfect. It faced challenges and dangers just like anywhere else. But its people had shown resilience, working together to protect one another even in the midst of chaos. And for the first time, Ethan realized that maybe being human wasn't something to hide or apologize for. It was something to embrace. The group wandered through the small town, their alien appearances drawing curious stares from the humans. Most of the townspeople seemed amused rather than alarmed, mistaking the students for actors in elaborate costumes. A boy riding a bicycle slowed down to gawk at Jake's shimmering blue skin, while an elderly woman smiled warmly at Chloe's glowing green eyes. Ethan walked slightly ahead of the group, feeling oddly out of place despite being among his own kind. This is ridiculous, Chloe muttered under her breath, tugging at the edge of her jacket. They're staring at us like we're some kind of circus act. Maybe because we are a circus act, Jake replied with a smirk. He raised his hand and waved dramatically at a group of children who had stopped to watch them. The kids giggled and waved back before running off to tell their friends. Ethan glanced over his shoulder, catching Leah's eye. She gave him a small smile, silently encouraging him to keep going. He appreciated her support, but he couldn't shake the tension coiling in his chest. Every laugh, every comment from Jake and Chloe felt like another weight pressing down on him. Their guide drone led them to a modest house near the center of town. An elderly man stood on the porch, leaning on a cane. His hair was gray, and his face was lined with age, but his eyes sparkled with kindness. You folks look like you're from out of town, he said, his voice warm and welcoming. Care to join me for dinner? My wife always makes too much food anyway. Jake snorted. Dinner? What are we eating? Rocks. The old man chuckled, clearly unfazed by Jake's rudeness. No rocks, I promise. Just good old-fashioned human cooking. Name's Mr. Harper, by the way. Ethan stepped forward hesitantly, surprising even himself. Thank you, Mr. Harper. We'd love to join you. He spoke slowly, enunciating each word carefully so the others could understand him. Mr. Harper's face lit up. Well, looks like one of you speaks our language. Come on in, all of you. Inside, the house was cozy and inviting. The smell of roasted chicken and fresh bread filled the air, making Ethan's stomach rumble. He hadn't realized how hungry he was until now. The group sat around a large wooden table as Mrs. Harper bustled about, setting plates of food in front of them. Jake wrinkled his nose at the plate of mashed potatoes placed before him. What is this stuff? He asked, poking it suspiciously with his fork. It's called mashed potatoes, Ethan explained quietly. It's soft and tasty. You should try it. To everyone's surprise, Jake took a hesitant bite, and then another. Huh, he said after swallowing. Not bad. Chloe rolled her eyes but didn't say anything. Instead, she focused on cutting her chicken into tiny pieces, avoiding eye contact with anyone. As they ate, Mr. Harper began asking questions about where they were from. Ethan answered cautiously, sticking to vague explanations about traveling far away. But when the conversation turned to Earth, he found himself opening up. He talked about human history, sharing stories of ancient civilizations, brave explorers, and groundbreaking inventions. He described how humans had faced countless challenges, wars, famines, diseases, and yet had always found ways to survive and thrive. Mia listened intently, nodding along as Ethan spoke. Even some of the other students seemed interested, leaning forward to catch every word. Jake, however, crossed his arms and scowled. "So what?" he interrupted. "Humans still don't have half the tech we do." Ethan met his gaze steadily. "Maybe not, but we've got something else, something stronger than technology. We've got heart. No matter how hard things get, we keep going. That's what makes us special." For a moment, no one said anything. Then Mr. Harper broke the silence with a proud smile. "That's right, son. Don't ever forget that." Chloe shifted uncomfortably in her seat, glancing at Ethan with a flicker of doubt in her eyes. For the first time, she didn't have a snarky remark ready. Instead, she picked up her fork and began eating again, her movements slower, more thoughtful. When dinner ended, the group thanked Mr. and Mrs. Harper for their hospitality. As they stepped back outside, the cool evening air wrapped around them like a gentle embrace. Ethan looked up at the stars, feeling a strange sense of peace. Maybe this trip wouldn't change everything, but it might just change enough. The next morning, the students gathered in the Academy's docking bay, buzzing with excitement, or at least most of them were. Ethan stood near the back of the group, clutching his bag tightly. He wasn't sure how he felt about the upcoming trip. On one hand, it was Earth, the planet where his ancestors had come from. It was part of him, a piece of his identity. But on the other hand, he knew Jake and Chloe would use every chance they got to mock him further. Mia noticed Ethan's unease and walked over to stand beside him. "You'll be fine," she said with a reassuring smile. "Just think of it as an adventure." Ethan nodded, though he didn't feel convinced. The headmaster stepped forward then, his deep voice echoing through the large room. "Students, today marks an important step in your education. Earth may not be as advanced as our own civilizations, but understanding its culture will broaden your perspective. Remember, this is a learning experience, not a vacation." Jake leaned over to Chloe, whispering loud enough for Ethan to hear. "Yeah, because who wouldn't want to learn about mud huts and fyristics?" Chloe giggled, and Ethan forced himself to look away. He reminded himself that their words didn't matter. What mattered was proving to himself that he could handle this. The group boarded the sleek starship designed for interplanetary travel. Ethan found a seat by the window, watching as the ship lifted off smoothly. Below, Xerac 7 grew smaller until it disappeared entirely, replaced by the vast expanse of space. For a while, everyone was quiet, mesmerized by the view outside. Even Jake and Chloe seemed awestruck, though they tried to hide it. When the ship entered Earth's atmosphere, things changed quickly. The sky turned blue, and patches of white clouds floated past the windows. Ethan's heart raced as he recognized the familiar colors. It was nothing like the skies of Xerac 7, which were tinged with purple and gold. This was home, even if he had never set foot there before. The ship landed in a secluded area, disguised as a storm cloud to avoid drawing attention from humans. As the students disembarked, they looked around in surprise. Instead of the barren wasteland many had expected, they found themselves surrounded by tall trees, green fields, and chirping birds. The air smelled fresh, carrying hints of soil and flowers. "Well, this isn't so bad," Maya said, taking a deep breath. "It's beautiful." Jake crossed his arms, unimpressed. "Beautiful? It looks messy. Where are all the hovercars and energy towers?" Chloe wrinkled her nose. "And why does it smell like dirt? Don't humans have cleaning bots or something?" Ethan bit back a retort, choosing instead to focus on the scenery. He remembered stories his grandmother used to tell him about Earth, how vibrant and alive it was. Seeing it now, he understood what she meant. Every leaf, every blade of grass seemed full of life. Their guide, a small drone programmed to lead the group, hovered nearby. "Welcome to Earth," it announced in a cheerful voice. "Our first stop will be a nearby human settlement. Please follow me and remain discreet. Humans are not aware of extraterrestrial life, and we must maintain this secrecy." As they followed the drone along a narrow path, Ethan noticed how curious some of the animals were. A squirrel darted across their path, pausing briefly to stare at the strange visitors. Ethan smiled, bending down slightly to get a better look. Jake nudged Chloe, smirking. Look at primitive boy bonding with the wildlife. But Ethan ignored him. He was too busy soaking in everything around him. The rustling leaves, the distant sound of water flowing, the warmth of the sun on his skin. It was overwhelming, yet comforting at the same time. By late afternoon, they reached the edge of a small town. The houses were simple but charming, with colorful gardens and wooden fences. Children played in the streets, laughing and chasing each other. Adults waved hello as they passed by, unaware of the alien teenagers hiding among them. This place is ridiculous, Chloe muttered, shaking her head. How do they live without proper technology? Ethan glanced at her, his expression calm but firm. Maybe they don't need it. Maybe they're happy the way they are. Chloe opened her mouth to respond, but Jake interrupted. Whatever, human lover. Let's just finish this stupid tour already. Despite their harsh words, Ethan felt a flicker of hope. Earth wasn't perfect, but it was alive in ways these aliens couldn't understand. And maybe, just maybe, this trip would give them a glimpse of what truly mattered. Not flashy gadgets or advanced tech, but connection, resilience, and heart. Ethan sat at the back of the classroom, his eyes fixed on the screen in front of him. The lesson was about interstellar trade routes, but he wasn't really paying attention. Instead, he was trying to ignore the whispers coming from the row ahead. Jake, a tall Lyran boy with shimmering blue skin, leaned over to Chloe, an Arcturian girl with glowing green eyes. They were laughing quietly, glancing back at Ethan every few seconds. Hey, primitive, Jake called out suddenly, loud enough for the entire class to hear. Do you even know what a trade route is? Or do humans just wander around aimlessly until they find something shiny? A few students chuckled, while others rolled their eyes at Jake's antics. Ethan kept his gaze on the screen, pretending not to care. He had heard it all before, comments about how humans were weak, slow, and outdated compared to other species. But no matter how many times he told himself to ignore them, the words always stung. Chloe joined in, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Maybe we should ask Ethan if his ancestors traded rocks or sticks. Oh wait, I forgot. They probably didn't have anything worth trading. This time, the laughter was louder. Ethan clenched his fists under the desk, his face burning red. He wanted to say something, to defend himself, but he knew it wouldn't make a difference. Anything he said would only give them more ammunition. So he stayed silent, focusing instead on the faint hum of the classroom's energy panels overhead. Not everyone laughed, though. Across the room, Mia, a Nixian girl with silver hair that sparkled like starlight, gave Ethan a sympathetic look. She had been one of the few students who didn't treat him like an outsider when he first arrived at the academy. Unlike most aliens, she believed that differences between species shouldn't define how people treated each other. After class, Ethan packed up his things quickly, hoping to leave before Jake or Chloe could say anything else. But as he walked down the hallway, he heard footsteps behind him. It was Mia. "You okay?" she asked softly, falling into step beside him. Ethan shrugged. "It's fine. Just another day, right?" Mia frowned. "It's not fine. What they're doing isn't fair. You don't deserve to be treated like that." Ethan sighed. "It doesn't matter. They'll never change their minds about me, or about humans. We're just inferior to them." Mia shook her head firmly. "That's not true. Humans built incredible things. Your species survived wars, diseases, and disasters that would have wiped out most others. That takes strength, not weakness." Her words made Ethan pause. He had heard similar stories from his grandparents, tales of resilience and courage passed down through generations. But hearing someone else say it, especially someone like Mia, felt different. For a moment, he allowed himself to believe her. As they reached the cafeteria, Jake and Chloe appeared again, standing near the entrance with smug grins on their faces. "Hey, human," Jake called out. "Hope you're ready for tomorrow. Field trip to Earth. You might actually feel useful for once." The comment earned more laughs from nearby students. Ethan felt his chest tighten, but instead of looking away, he met Jake's gaze. There was no anger in his expression, just quiet determination. "I'll see you there," Ethan replied calmly before walking inside. Maya followed close behind, smiling to herself. Maybe, just maybe, this field trip would be exactly what Ethan needed to show everyone, including himself, that being human wasn't something to be ashamed of.